What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Midwest Outdoors podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jim O'Neill, and it feels good to be back. I know we took a long summer break, my mistake. But guys, we're back, and we have so much to get through over the next few months before this year's over, so we're gonna get right into it. I don't know about you guys, but when I was younger, I was told that the pond management was the worst thing going on for a fisherman. I was told that, the chemicals they were putting in was taking out oxygen, and that's why the plants died, and any fish that were inside of them were trapped and also died. And honestly, I kind of learned to hate pond management people. That's when I was introduced to Alex over the show season. Guy loves fishing rivers, catching smallmouth, things that I love doing. And when I found out what he did as a career, lake management, I said, hey, I gotta talk to you about this. So when he was in the same town as I was fishing, doing some of his management, I thought it was the perfect time to sit down. So although we're not gonna be talking about any drama or any big fish today, I hope you guys stay tuned and pay attention, because this episode's an action-packed one. We're talking about not only pond and lake management, but your forestry management, and how if you own your own parcel of land and have trees on it or forest, how you could benefit without cutting down anything or selling off the rights to your land. So stay tuned, and we're gonna be right back with more Midwest Outdoors podcast.
Midwest Outdoors Magazine helps you enjoy the outdoors, giving you the best information on where to go, what to use, and how to use it. With fishing maps marked by the pros, nature notes, in-depth interviews, and much, much more. Your subscription gets you 10 big issues of the best in fishing, hunting, and the great outdoors. Plus, Midwest Outdoors Digital Edition gives you dozens of extra articles. Sign up now at mwomag.com. That's mwomag.com.
Alrighty, everyone. Well, hey, Alex is off the water. You got the job done down there, huh?
Yeah. Wasn't too bad. Didn't take too long.
No.
Just a little bit of spraying, a little bit of boating, a little bit of fun. No problem.
Absolutely. And, we're going to get into it in a second here, but we were talking about it for a minute. We've seen both ponds a lot worse looking than this one,
Oh, yeah.
So, Alex, we're talking, this episode, we're talking about pond management. We're talking about forest management. Okay. Tell us a little bit about McCloud Aquatics and what you personally do. What are you doing out here today?
So, McCloud Aquatics, what we do is, we're an aquatics company. We do pond and lake management in terms that is identifying what is growing beneath the surface, what is growing on the surface, what's going on around and inside the pond, what's the ecosystem like, and how can we better that ecosystem. And sometimes that takes some sort of chemical applications. Sometimes there's mechanical, big equipment involved. Sometimes there is just water testing and sampling and simple things like that to better an ecosystem. And that's what we typically do on a day-to-day basis. Today, I was out here treating for some submerged weeds, some invasive weeds, and that would be a curly leaf pondweed today. There was also some algae on the surface, so I went ahead and sprayed some of that to try and get the pond looking a little cleaner for them as well.
When I grew up, I was kind of almost educated to not like you guys a little bit. And the more and more we talk, it doesn't sound like you guys are doing really harm, but if anything, making sure that the pond, the lake, is stable and healthy enough for fish life and plant life.
So when it comes to anything living, your pond is a living being, a lake is a living being. You're going to have things growing in there. Some of those things might be good, some of them might be bad. Too much of anything can be bad. Sure. So what we do is we go out and we make sure that the ecosystems are in a healthy and balanced state. Sometimes we go to ponds that are completely choked out with weeds, algae. The fish got nothing. There's low oxygen readings. It's terrible. Yeah. And then what we do is we go in and we'll try to balance that ecosystem. Some of that is a little bit of chemical application. Some of that might be mechanical, but in the long of the term, the ecosystem is what we're trying to balance. Fish and the ecosystem are always priority. Any of the products that we use, anything that goes into the water, that's never what's going to kill the fish. When the fish die, that's due to a lack of oxygen. When you kill things, it's going to take the oxygen out of the water. So typically when the fish die in a pond, or if you have a fish kill, it's normally from misuse of a product or overuse of a product, misdosing a product. Yeah. Even weather conditions can cause a fish kill. We've had fish kills with nothing even put in the water. So what it's about is just making sure that everything is done safe. There's proper training. You know how to read your labels, because the label is law by all means. You can't put too much in, and if the label tells you can't put that much in. So there's a safe way to do this, and there is a very dangerous way to do this. And the safe way to do that is just following the label, following the guidelines, following the law, and treading lightly. And just the best way to look at this is there's maintenance involved. Yeah. It's just similar to cutting a lawn. You can't do it overnight. If you do it overnight, the fish are going to die. Yeah. You do it step by step by step. Halfway through the season, you got a beautiful looking pond. Your fish are happy. You're happy. The neighborhood's happy. Everybody's pleased.
So, and it's important you say that, going small step at a time, because I do believe some of the concern about weed management, at least, was valid maybe 10, 15 years ago, because I feel like when some of those aquatic chemicals came out, people were dumping it in here and your lake would turn into this neon blue and it didn't look like people were measuring much, and just dumping buckets in, where I see you working and you got mathematic equations and you're sampling a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and seeing what each individual body of water needs.
Oh, most definitely. That is step one when we get to any pond, is we take an oxygen reading and we take temperature. That oxygen is critical because, like I said, the fish are only going to die typically due to that lack of oxygen. It's not due to the chemicals. They're not that harsh. Everything that we use is approved, monitored, and regulated by the EPA and other governmental agencies. Yeah. So these things are being said that they're safe for aquatic use and safe for humans to interact with in certain occasions within certain limits and restrictions. Sure. As long as you stay within that, everything is safe.
So Alex, right here we're in the Chicagoland region right now, but a lot of the Midwest, until you get too far south and too far north, a lot of the same plant life, right? Definitely. What are some invasive species right now that you're encountering a lot in the bodies of water around here?
Typically in Illinois, we have two main common invasive species. That is going to be Eurasian water milfoil, and that is going to be curly-leafed pondweed. We also have hydrilla, which was located and found for the first time in Illinois in DuPage County this year. So that was taken under control, and they have mitigated that and prevented the further spreading of that. There's also some, a cattail could be considered an invasive emergent plant. There are Phragmites. Those things spread like wildfire. Those aren't in the water, they're out of the water, but they do reside around ponds and wetlands. So those type of things that grow really fast, things that take over really fast, absorb sunlight, nutrients, take life from everything else, those are the things we don't want to have around in the ponds or in the ecosystems that we're trying to balance.
Just because someone has a healthy body of water one day doesn't mean that the next season or next year they're going to. We're looking at this body of water right here, and there's some beautiful lilies. And you said these are unique because they've got a pink flower to them and such. Yeah. But I didn't know those weren't invasive, but technically maybe invasive to this pond, or at least not native to this pond, I should say, right?
Yeah, that'd be a better way to put it, for sure.
Yeah, not native, because it is a local plant, but something not introduced here. And although humans were known for doing things, right? We introduce fish and species to bodies of water that probably shouldn't be. We're talking waterfowl, huh? Can just drop a seed or drop a little root of something, and then before you know it.
Oh, if we want to talk waterfowl, there is a plant that's called duckweed, and it is a little free-floating plant that floats on the top of your pond. It kind of looks like a clover or possibly a bead, but
you got it in my fish tank.
Oh, that stuff, It's called duckweed for a reason. It's brought over by ducks. It sits on their feathers and they fly from one pond to the next. Boom, now that pond has duckweed. Nobody brought it there. The birds brought it there.
Yeah.
The ducks. That's why they call it duckweed.
Now, there's some misconceptions, I feel like, about what truly makes a healthy pond. I was told when I was younger, if a pond is stained or dirty, it's not as healthy as a lake that's super clean. But that might not necessarily be true, all depending on the bottom and stuff. So what are some things that you guys look for that are indications of a truly healthy lake or pond?
So clear water, people have that idea that the clearest water is the cleanest water. That's not always the case. Sometimes some of the more turbid water can be some of the more enriched water. It depends on what you kind of want. Some of that more turbid, more muddy-ish water, typically a lot of sediments and nutrients and things that are mixed in with that, and that is great for plant growth and other things that need that nutrients. You got a crystal clear body of water, I might say it's a swimming pool. A little bit of coloration indicates that we got phytoplankton in there, we got some zooplankton in there, which is healthy. That's the bottom base of the food chain. Without that, you got nothing. So if you got no color in your pond, probably not really gonna have a lot of life, that's for sure.
So before we talk about McCloud exactly and how people could call you and come out, people want to just take care of it themselves, right? They'll do-it-yourselfers at home. And I understand there's not you can't do everything that you guys can do. I mean, I'm looking at a whole boat with a motor in it and a sprayer and everything. Not everyone can do that. But what are just some things or some helpful tips that people should be looking out for just to notice their health of their pond?
So maybe any sort of like a greenish, brownish, an interesting film maybe that's on the surface of the water. Kind of maybe a foul, weird odor. It just smells a little different than it did the day before. You might see a couple dead fish here and there that it doesn't make sense. You don't have crazy animals around or anything, any event to happen. Yeah. You could have very apparent things like excessive algae growth, excessive weed growth. If you see weeds that are in the pond that are growing from the bottom to the top of the pond, you might be thinking 5 feet of weeds. That's a lot of weeds. Yeah. Might be too much for the pond, and then that takes away from the environment. Too much weeds is no good. Too much algae, no good.
Everything that's living needs sunlight, it needs oxygen, it needs nutrients. So if you have all those weeds that are doing so well, that's great if all you're growing is weeds, but if you got fish in there, it's got to be taken away from them too.
Most definitely. And there are other things that, can be added in to kind of help with some of that, but balancing it out by removing some of that growth, keeping some of your native species, ridding those invasives, adding some maybe potentially nutrient mitigation or management, and fountains, diffused air, adding oxygen to the water. Those are all great tools that we can do to better the ecosystem of the pond.
Yeah. So. Now, maybe not so much a work or scientific question, but every time I've always seen someone like you working on a pond, I've always said, these guys have to know some of the secrets of these ponds. Are there things that you are a fisherman, Oh, yeah. Are there things that you pick up on doing this job, being on the water a lot and seeing the terrain? And
definitely acquired some new secret spots.
I believe that.
I would say that fish do like vegetation. They prefer vegetation sometimes, and especially in a pond, you don't have a lot of hard structure or anything like that. But being out on a boat gives me the ability to see things that you won't see from the shore. I'll see bass swimming out from underneath an algae mat. I didn't know that bass might hide out under an algae mat, or some bluegills are heavily congregated around a sunken tree, as you would expect. Yeah. But there also is some pretty cool things that you'll see in terms of big turtles, other big fish that I will never see from the bank, and you're down. Them, huh? They'll follow the boat, they'll sit under the boat, and it's an interesting experience.
So Alex, if someone gave you guys a call, what are some services that you're normal to doing on a body of water?
So I've been asked that question, and I like to put it this way. Once that pond is built and established, we can do everything that it needs. We can do things in the water, and we can do things around the water. We can add things like fountains, bubblers. We can add shoreline. We can add rock shoreline. We can add native plantings outside as a buffer to prevent erosion and prevent nutrients from going in. And bad things like the runoff, saving things like that.
Yeah.
We do cattail removal. We do, obviously, we'll treat for submerged weeds and algae. That's the main thing we're known for.
Yeah.
We do water testing, water sampling, contamination testings. Basically, you want it, we can do it. As long as the body of water's there, we got you covered.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, if you have a pond or a lake that needs a little help, or you just want to find out some more information and see how healthy it is, give McCloud Aquatics a call. We'll put the link below right here. And Alex, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jim.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
And keep our waters clean, will you?
Oh, always.
Always.
Ecosystem first.
Well, guys, stay tuned. We're going to jump up to northern Wisconsin, where we're going to talk about forest management. Stay tuned.
Midwest Outdoors Magazine helps you enjoy the outdoors, giving you the best information on where to go, what to use, and how to use it. With fishing maps marked by the pros, nature notes, in-depth interviews, and much, much more. Your subscription gets you 10 big issues of the best in fishing, hunting, and the great outdoors. Plus, Midwest Outdoors Digital Edition gives you dozens of extra articles. Sign up now at mwomag.com. That's mwomag.com.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome. As you see, we've taken a step out of the office and we have joined Miss Chrissy Shaw of the American Forest Foundation. And, well, we'll start right there. What exactly is the American Forest Foundation?
Yeah, so the American Forest Foundation is a nonprofit organization that has been around for about 80 years now, if you can believe it. And the mission of the organization is to bring meaningful conservation through the empowerment of landowners. And we've done that over the years in a number of different ways. We've done it through education, through advocacy down in Washington, D.C. We've done it through different programs, and now we're doing it through a new marketplace advantage with our program, Family Forest Carbon Program.
And what exactly is the initiative of that program?
Yeah, so the Family Forest Carbon Program enrolls landowners into the program to create additionality on our landscape and store carbon for us. And I think we kind of all know that trees are really amazing things, but they end up removing some of the natural greenhouse gases that are in the atmosphere today, and they end up storing it for us. So they can help with some of these excess greenhouse gases that we've introduced into our environment as a result of burning fossil fuels. So really kind of, that's what the program is aiming to achieve in the end. But when you look at the nuts and bolts of it, we can achieve a lot more than just that. So it's a pretty neat program when you think about it.
Absolutely. And your role as a forester, you know, I think just trees right away, and
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think of molecules in the air. But how does the carbon efforts and the carbon topic fit alongside with the AFF and
Yeah.
the foresters?
Yeah, so foresters, in terms of carbon, you know, this obviously is a thing that we specialize in. Carbon is wood. Carbon is what the tree uses and builds to grow. And so we've always kind of used it in a different way in terms of foresters and forest industry. But now there is a different way that we can see trees and value trees out there in the forest and actually put a dollar amount on it. So it's just kind of shifting the perspective a little bit in how we think about, you know, what a forest is and what we can do with it. And there's more options out there now, which is really kind of nice for landowners.
Yeah, it goes much further than planting trees and taking them down and logging.
Yep.
What are some other roles of a forester?
Yeah, so one of the things that foresters love to do is we love to think about, the future. We're always thinking about that. And so one of the things that a forester will come and do on your property is they'll come and develop a forest management plan for you to follow. So during that development of a plan, we look at the forest conditions, what the forest health is, if there's any invasive species that we need to take care of, and then we look at your goals and how do we project those into the future then and take you to the places that you want to go. So it really is kind of a planning job. But the other thing that foresters do is we do set up timber sales. There's other things that we offer, including, just consultation services for insects and diseases. And there's some foresters who actually have applicator licenses that can come out and do some spraying if you need that done in your forest. It really is kind of a broad role and a big span that we cover. But one thing that we're not loggers. So we don't actually come down and cut the trees. That is an image of a lumberjack that is reserved for the logger, who is very sacred. But, foresters are kind of the planning engine behind it. So.
Absolutely. And as an outdoorsman, I know there's a lot of organizations that make our land and our water usable. And one I'm familiar with is CRP. And what are the similarities or differences between them and you guys?
Yeah, so the NRCS CRP program, Conservation Reserve Program, basically they ask that, farmers basically let their fields go fallow, and they do it for ecological purposes. And so what they're looking to do is establish a native population of plants within a sea of farming that will house and provide habitat for insects that pollinate farmers' plants. So it's a really important program that does a pretty pivotal job in terms of, moving our food and what we eat forward and helps out farmers. And so when we think about the Family Forest Carbon Program, the similarities are that we do ask for conservation, but we don't ask for non-use is kind of like the real big key and the difference between a lot of other carbon programs. We just ask that landowners have sustainable use of their forest. So we're looking for a harvest that is less or lighter than the surrounding landscape, while preserving some of it for future. So, it's just about having that balance and making sure that that balance is there.
Very good. So now we can get into the carbon discussion.
Yeah.
What exactly is a carbon credit? Because I know carbon makes up almost everything.
Yeah.
But what exactly is a carbon credit?
Yeah, so a carbon credit is what we estimate trees, or, it can actually be just grasses, are storing for us on a landscape. And so there's certain calculations that foresters do in the field for us to translate that into essentially carbon credits. Our program generates an expected number of carbon credits per acre per year for each of our, enrollees. And that's essentially what we take to the marketplace is not actually that modeled gain is we take an actual measurement. So like when we enroll you, we actually will select some of our landowners to be part of our monitoring cohorts where we come back and we do actual measurements and then compare to the landscape that isn't enrolled in the program, and we see what the differences are. And if we have stored more carbon than the surrounding landscape, that's a carbon gain that we turn into a carbon credit.
Without using scientific terms I've never heard of, how does one exactly measure carbon?
Oh boy. Yeah, so it really is, actually it's pretty simple when you think about it. So it's
totally
the same,
simple, guys.
It's
totally simple. Go home and just start doing your carbon
you can do this
equations.
all the time. But really, it's about the volume of a tree. So if you've heard about board feet,
Yep.
like you go over to the store and you got lumber.
Yeah.
That's essentially what we're counting in a tree is board feet.
Yeah.
So we turn that calculation. It's a very complex calculation that actually I don't even know, but we have it in.
We let the lab coats.
Yep,
do
we
that.
have it in our methodology. So we
Yep.
have a set established way that we calculate it. But really the measurements are the same. So it's what we're looking for is the volume of that tree. And then we're comparing it to what the volumes of trees are that aren't enrolled. And that gain or loss, just depends, is what we will, bear or turn into a carbon credit. And, our program is pretty great for, people who are looking for flexible options. We kind of chatted about this before, but, we're really a conservation program, which is about sustainable use. And so we do allow for timber harvesting. It doesn't affect people's payments when they decide to harvest. So you can get timber sale revenue, be in our program, and have all of these benefits that are going to be guaranteed income for your property to achieve, forest stewardship goals, which is really great.
And let's talk about that for a minute, because it seemed like when the carbon credits kind of first started, right, it seemed more of an emphasis to the rainforest and stuff like that outside of especially residential American, landowners. But as it seemed to keep progressing, and as we know, companies worldwide are never going to really stop producing and creating pollution and carbon. So then it went from, my idea when I think of forestry and logging that term comes to me really quick. And when you're in the Northwoods up here, it's more common to see a truck carrying a bunch of tall lumber than it is down by me in Chicago, right? You don't see that too often. And seeing those trucks sometimes would make me think of deforestation, but that's not true. There's definitely harvests that make sense, right?
Oh, absolutely. So, it's really about what we're looking to achieve in a forest. And as a forester who's, been around for a while, and lots of other foresters can probably tell you this, the objectives can range. And it really depends what your forest has in it, what the conditions are, and what we want to achieve. And so harvesting can be a really good thing. Like, for example, ruffed grouse. So that only really kind of exists in younger forest conditions. And so in order for us to achieve that on properties, we typically look to harvesting in order to achieve that. So, but, again, ruffed grouse has a life cycle that spans not just within the younger forest, but also within the older forest. And so we have to kind of, along with harvesting, conserve some. And so that's kind of what we aim to achieve with our landowners who enroll. We're looking to have that sustainable use where we allow them up to a certain percentage that can come off of their forest, but then we're saving some for the future. And that's really kind of what it's about.
And, it's super cool to see trees that are very old. I know I just made it to the west coast of California see, some of our biggest, oldest trees in the world. But not every tree is meant to live forever either, right? Everything has a different lifespan, and at some point it becomes a nuisance or starts just becoming a dead piece of wood, right?
Yep. So, again, even dead pieces of wood can store carbon, and they can have value for a forest, right? So, we could have, let's say, emerald ash borer come through an area, and if it's not a very large percentage, or if it's already been attacked on someone's property, realistically the wood value isn't there anymore. But it still has value to the wildlife and the carbon that's around and in the forest and being stored there. So there's different aspects to trees and their lifespans and how it all plays out there. But it is really neat to see those very old trees that we have on our landscape. And typically in Wisconsin you might see something like oaks that live like 200 years or something like that. So it can be something that is achievable in a forest setting. It's just you have to really kind of be cognizant of what the forest health is telling you and what it needs. So, there are some circumstances that we have to say, okay, it's time to harvest, because we're looking to essentially save some species, So like oak wilt is a really great example of how we utilize harvesting and how we use harvesting to prevent that spread of that disease in a forest, which can be really devastating for oaks. We end up coming in and doing a perimeter around the infection site in order to basically stop it from spreading, because it spreads through root grafts of oak. And so this whole forest that we look at here, is all essentially a lot of oak overstory, and it's all root grafted. So
Okay.
if we have oak wilt get in there, it's really important to have a rapid response.
Sure.
So landowners who are on their property that are cognizant of those, insect and disease issues, or even just dying trees, those are really important to note and talk to your forester about. So
Yeah, things go by so much further than just green plants.
Yeah.
Some of the prettiest flowers or shrubs that I've seen, I find out that they're not supposed to be there, and can be dangerous
Yeah.
though to your landscape and to
Yep.
your other foliage and all your plants.
Yeah, yep. So there's a lot of forest health issues that you have to watch for that reduce biodiversity, and invasive species are one of them. So the woody invasive species that are identified in a forest setting are pretty detrimental to forest health, because it reduces the amount of natural regeneration that we're going to get on any given site. So what we really encourage in this program is for people to take care of those forest health issues, So on Bill's property here, we have some autumn olive that's actually along the road. I could point that out to you guys later.
Sure.
And Japanese barberry as well. So those two invasive species, if they're left to their own devices out there, we're going to have seed that spreads from birds. It goes all over the forest, and then as soon as we
Starts taking
have,
over.
as soon as we have a light gap in the forest, whether it's a harvest or something natural that happened, you're going to have those invasive species spring up, and they're going to outcompete the native tree species that should be there. So those are the things that we really want to hone in on when we're talking about forest health and maintaining biodiversity out there.
And why does it seem like that happens on invasive species? It kind of seems
Yeah.
like it happens on animals, fish, plants.
Yeah.
Why do they seem always to do better in not their own home?
Yeah, yeah. When we talk about invasive species, there's just no natural predators for them anymore. So they've been taken from a climate that's very similar to our own, and they're brought here and usually sold as ornamentals. And we don't know they're invasives until obviously we see them somewhere else besides where we planted them.
Yeah.
So it really is just about being here in a space where the climate is favorable, they're able to survive, but they don't have any natural predators. So there's nothing that keeps them in check, and then they just spread.
Now, I know part of the initiative and the program can be to reforest an area or plant new. I look at the property we're on today, and it's very diverse. I see many different bushes, many different trees. If an individual has a preference, right, on what trees they like, some people do.
Yeah.
Is there a little leeway on the program on what can be planted, or do you guys is there certain trees that have a higher carbon value? How does that all work?
Yeah, so with this program up here, we have improved forest management practices. And so that's what Bill is enrolled in. So we take an existing forest that's harvestable. And the theory is we're changing the harvest behavior that's typical in the region with our landowners. And we're conserving more, like I said, and we're allowing that harvesting still, but it's just within a certain limit. When you come to do plantings in some of these openings, if you need to, the species that you want to plant are the ones that are suited for the site. So, here he's got a lot of oak. He has a lot of natural regeneration of northern hardwoods underneath. Those are perfectly acceptable species. But when we talk about our planting practice, that's available to landowners in the Southeast United States. So like down in Georgia, we have loblolly pine that we're able to plant with landowners down there on their fallow fields. And it's a little bit different from the IFM practice that Bill's enrolled in, where it's a 30-year commitment down there. We do ask for them to have a forest management plan. We ensure the forest health by making sure they have a thinning in between there. And they're even allowed to do a final harvest in our program. And if they do that, then AFF offers to pay and replant, essentially. So we're looking to basically continue that forest into the future and do it in a sustainable way. So Loblolly pine is the best suited. It's the most well studied down there.
Yeah.
But that's not to say there aren't options in the future. We just haven't studied them and looked into it. So.
And planning seems to be important. You know, while we were setting up off camera, you talked about how you were putting together a 100-year plan for this property. And Chrissy, you're pretty young, but I'm going to have a feeling that you might not be around in 100 years from now.
Yeah.
So forest, right? It's not a 1 year, a 5 year. You have this almost ever living entity as long as it is responsibly taken care of and such.
Exactly. And so when you enroll in FFCP, we provide the means to have that forest management plan developed by a forester. So on Bill's property, they have a portion where they're enrolled in the managed forest law in Wisconsin as well, but there's a portion where they didn't have a plan at all. And they are able to enlist AFF foresters. So I came up here and developed a plan for the remainder of their property and talked to them about, what we want to do over the course of the tree's lifespan is really what I think about, It's not about my lifespan or their lifespan or anyone else's. It's about being a steward and understanding where these trees are in their lifespan and how we're going to continue that and play that out on the landscape in a healthy way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, with anything somewhat new, right, or misunderstood, there's sometimes fears, right? A couple I want to address that I think will put the minds at ease a little bit. The one is you talk about this carbon market. I've heard it referred to almost as crypto before because it's like something. It's something you don't touch physically, right? And it's changing kind of always. Some people are concerned that we know a lot of the pollution on the earth is maybe coming from Asia, right? And so one of the questions I get is, are these credits available for China to purchase, or where are these going? And you kind of mentioned that there's some big names just right here in America that need to offset. And what exactly does net zero mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first I'll talk about, like how AFF and TNC approach the carbon marketplace. So with FFCP, this is a joint effort between the two nonprofit organizations. And the goal really is to create additionality. So when we decide to sell our credits with a buyer who's looking to offset, both organizations have to give their approval in order to say, yes, we're going to sell their credits to them. And what we look for is best practices to be applied for emissions reductions right now. So we look for, do you have the technology and are you implementing the technology that's available to you today to reduce your emissions to the extent possible? And if that's a green light, then we say, okay, well, this is what we can offer you, So it's really just about making sure that that company has a sustainable plan as well into the future. So it's about looking for that alignment. So it's not necessarily available to everybody, although they can certainly apply and ask about it and inquire, but it's something that we do vet as two nonprofits that are interested in conservation. And the other thing with net zero, we're looking for basically emissions to be entirely offset by industry that is producing extra greenhouse gas emissions in our atmosphere. And so that goal is very lofty right now, considering where our technology is today. So a lot of these natural climate solutions have come about, and that's the reason for the carbon marketplace, is because there is a need and there's a gap to fill in the 20 or 30 years before we have that technology available to us.
And I think it's important that we don't think of everything as smokestacks anymore either. When it comes to the carbon. You said earlier that Netflix is a buyer. And, they're not maybe manufacturing things, but the supercomputers and all the storage that they have to have for all their data, it's all utilizing energy, which obviously needs to be created somehow.
Yep, exactly. So there's a number of different things that contribute to greenhouse gases, and it is a really big life cycle to talk about. But, when you think about just kind of like the basics of what we're trying to do with forest carbon, in terms of the global carbon like atmosphere or, cycle. That's what I was looking for. We're looking to take the emissions that we as humans are creating and producing and putting into our atmosphere that's additional outside of natural processes that happen, right? So we have essentially this really big, removal of geologic carbon, which is fossil fuels. And then we end up burning them and they go into the atmosphere. And so that additional increase is what we're looking to store. And trees are really incredible because they do that, right?
Yeah.
They photosynthesize, they grow, they hold the carbon. They do those really awesome things for us already. So, this is essentially, almost like a no-brainer in terms of like, what are we going to do? Here it is. This is the answer for now.
Earth's lungs, right? As they call them, the trees.
Yep, exactly.
And the other question, talking about people's property, is they want to know, is it still theirs? Do you guys own their land then? Or, how are people going to be on their land all the time? Are they going to come unexpected? What's the expectations for someone that's in the program?
That's a really great question. So when people enroll with us, their property rights remain theirs. They have the right to timber, they have the right to recreate, do all of those things. What our program asks for is a transfer of carbon rights for their 20-year commitment. And after that 20-year commitment is done, the program returns those carbon rights to the landowner. If they don't want to continue, of course, we would love them to continue, so that's really kind of what we ask for. And we're a little bit different than other carbon programs because we do ask for association essentially with your deed, which is not common in the carbon space. But again, that actually comes back to what we were looking to do as AFF and TNC, which was to create that conservation space. And so we wanted to say, like, this is where we are. Other carbon programs don't count us, because we don't want to be double counted in that space. So that's the reason why we attach ourselves to folks' deeds. But, in terms of like coming onto the property and accessing it, obviously we have very friendly foresters who will give you a call before that happens. And we do our best to respect, your family's traditions. If you're hunters, if you're hikers and like to do all that stuff, then we kind of work around those types of things that we have going on.
Absolutely. What transition, or I guess stay on the same topic.
Sure.
Who is eligible for this program? Yeah,
so it's actually, how I talked about the improved forest management practices and we're looking to change harvesting behavior. So as a result, different regions actually have different criteria for eligibility. So in the Midwest, which includes Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, our eligibility criteria is 80 square feet of basal area, and we're looking for an oak hickory forest, along with maple beech birch forest. So that's like northern hardwoods or oak and hickory that we're looking to enroll. And the reason for those very specific parameters, again, comes back to our desire to have that true climate impact and prove that we're creating additionality. So when we come back on the monitoring side of things, which is usually the most expensive part of a carbon program, we're looking to compare to unenrolled properties and see what the actual difference is in terms of additionality that we've created. So
overall, though, that's not a whole lot of space. So you could get away. You don't need a giant property to be part of this program.
No. So the minimum acreage that you can enroll is 30 acres. And the reason we did that is because AFF's mission is to have that conservation impact through family forest owners. And if you look at who family forest owners are, they're typically not more than 100 acres of ownership. So, we had to kind of modify our program and tool it so that it was available for the family forest owners that we're looking to create that impact with. So,
absolutely. Yeah. When you get on the ground, when you get on someone's property, what are some of the first things you look for right away to know kind of how successful or where you're going to start with the program?
Yeah, so Some of the things that we look for, obviously, are the eligibility criteria. But if there are insect and disease issues that we notice while we're out on the property, we want those landowners to address those, and we want them to take care of them. So if it's something like I mentioned before, oak wilt, where we could have potentially a very large region that's affected, we want them to come in and do the application of forestry that will stop the spread of oak wilt before we consider enrolling them. So, when thinking about applications, the foresters make those recommendations, but also our program, again, is pretty unique that we also let landowners decide where they want to enroll. So if, you guys come to us and say, yeah, I'm looking to enroll, and we say, all right, well, we found these 200 acres eligible, and you say, actually, no, these 100 acres over here, I'm looking to, do some other kind of management or something like that. As long as it's a sustainable management, we'll approve that partial enrollment for you guys. So, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing, which is usually what other carbon programs are. So
yeah, this property alone, you said there's kind of multiple different studies or programs going on.
Yeah, yep. So they're actually enrolled in another AFF program, the American Tree Firm system, on the northern end of their property, and they have lots of red pine plantations up there. Not eligible for FFCP, but it's a beautiful forest, and it's going to be managed moving forward in the future. So that was mostly what I was writing the plan for. Actually, was the tree farm system area.
So Chrissy, a lot of people that are watching or listening to this right now, unfortunately, don't fall under the requirements for the program, but maybe they want to be a steward to the conservation, right? What are some things they can do on their own property to uplift the area?
Yeah, so when you think about, doing sustainable management on your property, obviously, you want to take care of forest health issues that might be present. So identification of the invasive species that might be present in your understory is really pretty critical. Those can be identified pretty easily in the spring or in the fall. They'll be the first to leaf out and the last to drop their leaves out there. Another indicator that you might have one is that they are just like really widespread. They're all over, it's not just like one little plant. It's like a giant plant and there's multiple of them. So identifying those and taking care of those so that you can maintain your biodiversity that's native on site is really important. The other thing to do is, if you have openings in your forest where there is regeneration coming in, make sure that it's native and it's going to be adapted to climate change. So some of the species that are predicted to do very well in climate change are oaks, along with white pine. But they think that those two in particular are going to be doing pretty well because they have a very great taproot that they form as a tree. So, some of the predictions that are coming for forests is this uncertain precipitation pattern. We never know when, we never know where, we never know how much. And so having a tree that has a taproot like that is going to be able to adapt if conditions change and things, kind of go a little haywire. And then if you're thinking about harvesting, try and do a sustainable harvest. Think about not only what you need, but what needs are in the future. Which is, again, where I live as a forester, as I live in the future all the time. But
always thinking of what's next.
Yeah, exactly. I'm always thinking about what's next. But, if you're planning a harvest, don't look to do those liquidation harvests where it's all or nothing.
Clear everything.
Yeah, it's, in some instances it might be appropriate if you're having like a forest health issue or something like that, but that's really the only scenario. I definitely encourage folks to, sustainably harvest, have that income available to you and your future generations over the course of your ownership. And then, we'll be able to not only provide forest health, but we're going to improve that water quality. We're going to improve the soil quality by reducing erosion and runoff events. And then we're going to improve air quality by maintaining more trees on site. So it's really just about kind of, those three probably simple things when you think about it.
Sure. Now, as for our lottery winners, the ones that get to enroll in the program.
Yep.
What does that look like? What are the first steps? And obviously, how can they get more information about finding out and to do a little of their own research before diving in?
Yeah, so if they go over to the familyforestcarbon.org website, there is a lot of information that's out there for them, including some recorded webinars that just give them the basics of the program and talk about payments and what to expect. And once they enroll, they are provided a community of like-minded landowners to ask questions of. And then quarterly, we do set up forester meet and greets. Essentially, it's like a forester coffee meeting, but virtual. So we have all of our landowners invited, and our foresters who are with AFF come and answer questions. They talk to the landowners about, any issues or concerns they might have in their forest, and help them just kind of bring their, forest management plan to life. So it's kind of cool.
And I think that gives an awesome opportunity for individuals that are thinking about it on the fence, because you can talk to people who have gone through it for maybe only a month or two, or probably individuals that have been years involved.
Yep. We have had enrollees since 2020. Back in the apps was where it all kind of started. But, we just kind of expanded as things progressed. And so in the Midwest, we started enrolling in 2022 in the Northwoods. So we have some very early adoptees. And then there's some that, like Bill, he just enrolled this year. So, he's pretty new to the program.
And I think we've talked about, the financial benefit and cleaning our air, because God knows we need it a little while,
Yep.
I wake up every morning thankful that I can breathe. That's usually the first thing I check.
We all like to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
What are some other benefits that you can expect to receive from doing this?
Yeah. So, some of the things that we do for landowners is we provide the technical assistance to develop that forest management plan and your goals. So if you're a landowner who, maybe has never done anything in their forest and maybe doesn't know where to start, you'll get connected to a forester and talk to them about how would you like to use this property? How, what do you see yourself doing out here in the future? And then once we start those conversations, we end up identifying some goals for you guys and putting them to paper and giving you a plan. So, for Bill and the family, they have some hunters on their property. And one of the things that we're going to look to do with them is blend, that habitat of very early seral forests that provide the food, the cover, the comfort for the critters, along with the older forests in his property. So we are looking to set up some harvests, and ideally we're going to create some openings in the forest that are pretty large, and again ideal for wildlife to come and enjoy them. So it really is dependent on what people want to do.
Absolutely.
And we can paint that picture for pretty much anybody. But I would say the folks who, are looking for, maybe like asset liquidation, this program isn't the right one for you.
No. I think having more beauty to your property, having an income off of, for the most part, land that people aren't utilizing.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, bringing more nature and giving homes to animals. And if you are a hunter, giving yourself a better situation.
Yep, for sure. And, something else that I should probably mention, because I love fishing. I know you guys love fishing too.
It's my favorite. Today we're here in the field, but I'm like, where's the next lake?
So, something that our program does is, with that conservation practice and the sustainable harvesting that we lay out for folks, we're looking to have essentially more tree canopy cover than the surrounding landscape. And one of the things that I see as a forester that's pretty detrimental to water quality in the woods is erosion and runoff that comes as a result either from a timber sale that wasn't set up properly, or, just happened to have a really bad rain event right after it, or, roads that end up getting built and we don't have the water protection that we need within it, because once those sediments get into the water, it gets cloudy. And that reduces increases the oxygen that you have. So having a sustainable harvesting plan is really pretty critical to water quality too.
I think it's overlooked how
It is.
those roots of those trees
Yeah.
hold our ground
A lot.
together.
It's
Yes.
a lot. It's a lot.
So if someone's seen this podcast and they say, you know what, I'm ready,
Yeah.
I need to do something.
Yeah.
How do they get a hold of Chrissy or part of the team? How do they get?
Yeah, so the first step, they go over to the familyforestcarbon.org website, and you'll find your property online. And then once you find it, you can either choose to talk to a forester right away, like you can actually select that, or you can get connected to what we call our account representatives, who will kind of just talk about the basics of the program and then get you connected to a forester. So either way, the website is the way to do it. That's how we streamline things, and then we fish it out from there and you get connected to a forester for enrollment and chatting about the program.
So Chrissy, if someone's watched this episode now and they are a qualifying individual and have a property ready to do it, where do they go right away to start the process?
Yeah, so if landowners are interested in finding out if they're eligible, they don't even have to know if they're eligible.
Sure.
You go over to the familyforestcarbon.org website. We have a mapping tool that you can find your property on. You just answer, I think it's like 5 questions or something like that. And then you can actually select to talk to a forester right after you get your report, and you'll get connected to a forester, maybe me, and we'll chat on the phone and talk about the program and what it means to you and how we can do some good together.
Sure. So you heard her, everyone. If you have that land sitting there and you're not doing a whole lot with it, or you want to do something more with it, improve the air we breathe and improve the nature around you. And it starts at the American Forest Foundation. Absolutely. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. And we're going to throw it back to the studio to wrap up this week's show.
Midwest Outdoors Magazine helps you enjoy the outdoors, giving you the best information on where to go, what to use, and how to use it. With fishing maps marked by the pros, nature notes, in-depth interviews, and much, much more. Your subscription gets you 10 big issues of the best in fishing, hunting, and the great outdoors. Plus, Midwest Outdoors Digital Edition gives you dozens of extra articles. Sign up now at mwomag.com. That's mwomag.com.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the studio. And thanks for your patience, whether you made it all the way through the podcast or skipped around. I want to thank you guys for enduring our little break we took. We were on the road for a while, filming in North Dakota, filming in Canada, Wisconsin, and put some great Midwest Outdoors TV together that will air next year. If you guys never checked out the TV show, make sure you do. MidwestOutdoors.com will tell you exactly where we air in your area, or you can always check us nationally on Pursuit Network or on YouTube. So if you're watching this, make sure to subscribe, go over to the other side, check out our videos or shorts. And if you guys are listening to the podcast, next time you're in front of your phone or your computer, check out Midwest Outdoors TV on YouTube and check out what we got there. I think it's a lot of high quality fishing content, but also education. Help you guys catch some more fish coming up. Huge shout out and thanks to Chrissy and Alex for joining us on today's episode and getting us a little bit out of our comfort zone. Yes, it wasn't as exciting as maybe a bass blowing up on a frog, but very crucial information and good to know for our outdoor stewardess and outdoor landowners, because whether you have a pond or a forest, I think we learned some vital information today on not only how to protect what you have, but maybe make a little money off of it too. Running out of time in this week's episode, guys, but while we were gone, we also were at ICAST, heard a lot about what's going on in the industry, and saw tons of new products. I know everyone gets excited about new products. Give you guys a quick little haul from our friends at Bahia. they sent us a nice little package here. All right, start with this bad boy, the carp hat. Absolutely love it. Saw this on the shelf in their display at ICAST, said I gotta have it. So got the roped trucker hat right there. And then what Bajío is known for, the sunglasses. All right. These are the Zapatas. This is a new line. Comes with a nice little bag and then a recycled sustainable material case. Really nice, sleek looking. And there they are. You got the brown freshwater lenses with the green water matter frames there. So those are pretty sharp. Of course they're polarized and awesome glasses. These are the glass lenses. You can get either plastic or glass lenses, depending on your preference, your price point. Plastic's a little cheaper, but glass is more scratch resistant and generally lasts longer. So you pay for what you get, right? But awesome gifts there from Bajío. So thanks, guys. But we have tons of products that I want to go over. We're going to do that all in the next episode. We're also going to talk to some people that were at ICAST, and who knows what else we have. All I know, guys, is we're going to be back on a more regular schedule. In fact, for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be pumping out a pod each week. So make sure you are around. And as always, guys, thanks for the support. Make sure to support our title sponsor, Fish Daddy, at fishdaddy.outdoors.com. MWO10 for 10% off. Helps with shipping in a little bit more there. So go stock up, guys. Our fall fishing season's right around the corner. I've heard the salmon have started biting. The walleye have gotten real good at low light conditions right now. So fishing is picking up. Weather's going to stabilize. Our thoughts and prayers are with everyone in the Midwest, especially in Wisconsin and Illinois, who got all the rain the last week. I know personally we dealt with some flooding. But again, guys, we're back. We're healthy. We're back in the office. We're going to be shooting some podcasts. So thanks always for being here. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't. And guys, we'll see you next week. Tight lines.